The laughter stopped mid-beat when Jimmy Fallon realized the quiet man in the gray sweater sitting across from him wasn't just another guest promoting a local business. Something in Robert Chen's eyes, the way he kept glancing at his hands, the careful way he chose each word, told Jimmy this Tuesday night taping was about to become something else entirely. What started as a feel-good segment about small business owners was about to reveal a secret that would silence Studio 6B and change how America thought about generosity forever. It was supposed to be simple. Robert Chen, 58, owner of Chen's hardware store in Queens, had been selected for Jimmy's Hometown Heroes segment. His store had been featured in a local news piece about businesses that helped their communities during tough times. The producers thought it would be perfect for the show, a heartwarming story about a family business giving back. What they didn't know was the story behind the story. The Tonight Show stage gleamed under the familiar blue and gold lighting. The Roots provided their signature musical backdrop as Jimmy bounced between his desk and guest chair with his usual infectious energy. The audience of 240 people buzzed with the excitement that made Studio 6B feel electric every night. Jimmy wore his classic dark suit, with the relaxed confidence that had made him America's favorite late-night host. Robert sat rigidly in the guest chair, his weathered hands folded in his lap. He wore a simple gray cardigan over a white shirt, the kind of outfit a man puts on when he wants to blend into the background. His black hair, streaked with silver, was neatly combed, and behind wire-rimmed glasses, his dark eyes held something that looked like both sadness and determination. During the pre-interview, Robert had been soft-spoken but pleasant. He talked about his hardware store, how his father had started it in 1987, how he'd taken over when his father retired. Standard stuff, good television, the kind of story that made people feel good about humanity without asking too much of them emotionally. But as the cameras rolled and Jimmy launched into his introduction, something shifted in Robert's demeanor. When Jimmy mentioned the news story about his store helping struggling families with free repairs and supplies, Robert's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. His hands gripped the arms of his chair just a little tighter. "So, Robert," Jimmy said with his signature warmth, leaning forward in his chair, "tell us about Chen's Hardware. I understand you've been helping a lot of families in Queens lately." Robert nodded slowly. "Yes, we try to help when we can. Nothing special, really." Jimmy's smile widened. "Come on, don't be modest. The news story said you've donated thousands of dollars worth of supplies to families who couldn't afford home repairs. That's pretty incredible." Something flickered across Robert's face, a micro-expression that Jimmy, trained by years of reading guests, caught immediately. It wasn't pride or embarrassment. It was something deeper, something that looked almost like relief mixed with fear. "Actually," Robert said quietly, and his voice carried a weight that made the Roots' background music seem suddenly too loud. "There's something I need to tell you about that." Jimmy's host instincts kicked in. This was either going to be great television or something that required careful navigation. He could feel the energy in the studio shift, the way it did when something unscripted was about to happen. "Okay," Jimmy said gently, his voice automatically dropping to a more intimate register. "What's going on?" Robert looked out at the audience, then back at Jimmy. His hands were trembling slightly now, and when he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "The donations aren't coming from my store." The studio fell quiet. Even the audience seemed to sense that something significant was happening. Jimmy waited, his expression open and encouraging, giving Robert the space to continue. "For the last 15 years, Robert said, his voice growing stronger, "I've been receiving anonymous cashier's checks. Thousands of dollars every few months, always with a note that says, 'For families who need help.' No name, no return address. I've been using that money to help people, but everyone thinks it's coming from me." Jimmy's eyebrows raised slightly. This wasn't the direction he'd expected the interview to go, but his journalist instincts were engaged now. "So you have no idea who's been sending this money?" Robert's hand stilled. He looked directly into Jimmy's eyes, and in that moment, everything changed. "Actually," he said, "I do know." The words hung in the studio air like a confession waiting to be born. Jimmy leaned forward unconsciously, and behind the cameras, producers in the control room stopped their quiet chatter. "It's me." Two words that hit the studio like a physical force. Jimmy's mouth opened slightly, his quick mind trying to process what he just heard. "I'm sorry, what?" "I'm the anonymous donor," Robert said, and now tears were starting to form in his eyes. "I've been sending myself those checks for 15 years. I set up a separate account, a different name, everything. I wanted to help people, but I couldn't do it openly." The silence in Studio 6B was complete. 240 people held their breath. The cameras kept rolling, but this had stopped being a standard late-night interview. This was something else entirely. Jimmy sat back in his chair, his comedy timing completely abandoned. "Robert," he said softly, "why?" And that's when the dam broke. "Because 15 years ago," Robert said, his voice thick with emotion, "I was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, stage 4. They gave me 3 months to live." The audience gasped audibly. Several people in the front rows brought their hands to their mouths. Jimmy's face went through a series of expressions, from shock to confusion to deep concern. "The doctors were wrong," Robert continued. "I beat it. I went into remission. But for 3 months, I thought I was going to die, and all I could think about was what I was leaving behind. My store, some money in the bank, and nothing that mattered. No family to speak of, no children, no legacy except hardware and screws and paint cans." Jimmy reached forward instinctively, his hand moving toward Robert's arm, but stopping just short. "Robert." "So when I survived," Robert said, "I made a promise. I was going to use whatever time I had left to help people. But I was scared. Scared of being seen as showing off, scared of being judged, scared that if I did it openly, people would question my motives. So I created this elaborate system to donate to myself, to make it look like someone else was the generous one." The emotion in the studio was palpable. Jimmy could see people in the audience wiping their eyes. Behind the cameras, crew members who had worked hundreds of shows were frozen, understanding they were witnessing something unprecedented. "For 15 years," Robert continued, "I've been giving away almost everything I make. Living in a tiny apartment, driving a 20-year-old car, wearing the same clothes, and pretending that some mysterious benefactor was funding my store's community work. I've helped dozens of families repair their homes, pay for heating bills, fix their cars. But everyone thinks I'm just the messenger." Jimmy's professional composure was cracking. This wasn't just a heartwarming story anymore. This was a man bearing his soul, confessing to a kind of reverse fraud, admitting to a generosity so profound and so private that he'd hidden it even from the people he was helping. "Why are you telling us this now?" Jimmy asked, his voice gentler than anyone in the audience had ever heard it. Robert's tears were flowing freely now. "Because last month, the cancer came back." The studio fell into a silence so complete that the air conditioning seemed loud. Jimmy's face went pale. This had become something far beyond television, beyond entertainment, beyond anything that happened on late-night talk shows. "The doctors say I have maybe 6 months this time," Robert said, "and I realized I can't take this secret with me. I can't die knowing that all those families think some stranger helped them, when really it was just a scared man trying to figure out how to matter." Jimmy stood up from his chair. This was unprecedented. In all his years of hosting, he had never abandoned his position behind the desk during an interview. But this wasn't an interview anymore. This was a human being sharing the most important truth of his life on national television. He walked around his desk and sat on the edge of it, directly in front of Robert. "How much?" he asked quietly. "How much have you given away?" Robert wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "Everything. Over $400,000 in 15 years. Everything except what I need to keep the store running and feed myself." The number hit the audience like another wave of shock. $400,000 given away in secret, by a man who drove a 20-year-old car and wore cardigans that had seen better days. "Robert," Jimmy said, and his voice was thick with emotion now too. "You've been living like you're poor while secretly being one of the most generous people in America." "I just wanted to help," Robert said simply. "I just wanted my life to mean something." Jimmy looked out at the audience, then back at Robert. In that moment, he made a decision that would define not just this interview, but everything people remembered about this episode. "Everyone," Jimmy said, turning to face the audience while staying close to Robert, "I want you to understand what we just heard. This man has been Queen's anonymous angel for 15 years. He's been giving away his life savings, living on almost nothing, and letting everyone else take credit for his generosity." The audience began to respond, not with applause, but with something deeper. People were standing, not because they were prompted to, but because sitting felt inadequate in the face of what they'd just witnessed. "But that's not the most incredible part," Jimmy continued, his voice carrying clearly through the studio. "The most incredible part is that he's doing this while facing terminal cancer. Twice. This man has stared death in the face and decided that the most important thing he could do with his time was help other people. And he's been doing it so quietly that even the people he helped didn't know it was him." Jimmy turned back to Robert, who was looking down at his hands again. "Robert, look at me." Robert raised his eyes, and Jimmy could see the fear there, mixed with relief and exhaustion. "You said you wanted your life to mean something," Jimmy said. "Your life has meant everything. To dozens of families who got the help they needed when they needed it, most. To a community that learned what generosity looks like. To everyone watching this right now who just learned that heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear cardigans and run hardware stores and give away everything they have without ever asking for credit." The emotion in Jimmy's voice was raw now, unfiltered by his usual performance. "You've been worried about mattering, but you've mattered more than almost anyone I've ever met." Robert was crying openly now, but his tears had changed from sadness to something that looked like relief. "I was so scared people would think I was showing off," he said. "Robert," Jimmy said, and he reached out and took the older man's hand. "Nobody thinks you're showing off. Everybody thinks you're extraordinary." The studio erupted then, not with polite applause, but with something that sounded like a release of collective emotion. People were standing, crying, cheering, and Jimmy could see that some of the crew members behind the cameras were wiping their eyes. But Jimmy wasn't done. He looked directly into the main camera, the one that would carry this moment to millions of viewers. "I don't usually do this," he said, "but I think we need to do something here. Robert has been Queen's anonymous donor for 15 years. He's given away $400,000 and helped dozens of families, and he's been doing it while battling cancer and living on almost nothing himself." Jimmy stood up, still holding Robert's hand. "I think it's time Robert got some help in return." He turned to his production team. "Get me a number for Memorial Sloan Kettering. Get me a number for Queen's Community Services. Get me numbers for everyone who helps people like Robert." Back to the camera. "Robert Chen has spent 15 years taking care of other people. It's time we took care of him." The audience was on its feet now, and the applause was unlike anything Studio 6B had ever heard. It wasn't entertainment applause. It wasn't even appreciation applause. It was the sound of people recognizing something sacred, something that reminded them what human beings could be at their very best. Robert stood up slowly, still overwhelmed by what was happening. Jimmy kept hold of his hand, anchoring him in the moment. "There's something else," Jimmy said to the audience. "Robert, you've been worried about your legacy, about what you're leaving behind. But look around you." Robert turned to see the audience, all standing, many crying, all looking at him with something that could only be described as love. "This is your legacy," Jimmy said. "Not just the families you helped, but everyone who just learned what real generosity looks like. Everyone who just saw what it means to live for other people. Everyone who's going to go home tonight and think about how they can matter the way you've mattered." Jimmy turned back to the camera one more time. Robert Chen, owner of Chen's Hardware in Queens, has been secretly donating to his own store for 15 years to help struggling families. He's given away $400,000 while living on almost nothing. And he's been doing it while battling terminal cancer. His voice grew stronger, more definitive. If you want to help Robert, or if you want to help the families he's been helping, Chen's Hardware is at 4247 Northern Boulevard in Queens. But more than that, if you want to honor what Robert's taught us tonight, find someone in your own community who needs help. Because that's what Robert would want. He'd want all of us to be anonymous donors in our own lives. The show had run long, far past its usual ending time, but nobody cared. This had stopped being television and become something much more important. As the cameras finally stopped rolling and the audience began to file out, people approached Robert, not for autographs or selfies, but to shake his hand, to hug him, to tell him he mattered. Several people pressed business cards into his hand, local doctors and specialists who wanted to help with his treatment. Jimmy stayed with Robert through it all, and when the studio finally emptied, they sat together in the quiet aftermath. "I can't believe I told everyone," Robert said. "I can't believe you kept it secret for 15 years, Jimmy replied. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, two men who had just shared something that would change both their lives. "Jimmy," Robert said finally, "thank you." "For what?" "For letting me tell the truth, for making it okay to have been afraid, for helping me understand that kindness doesn't have to be perfect to be real." Jimmy smiled, and for the first time all evening, it was his natural smile, not his television smile. "Robert, you've been teaching people about kindness for 15 years. Tonight, you just taught the whole country." 3 weeks later, Robert Chen's story had become national news. Chen's Hardware had received donations from all 50 states. Memorial Sloan Kettering had offered him treatment at no cost. Most importantly, dozens of other anonymous donors had come forward, inspired by Robert's courage to reveal their own secret generosity. Robert lived not 6 months, but 2 more years. He spent them openly helping people, no longer hiding his generosity behind elaborate schemes. He established the Chen Foundation, which continues to help families in Queens and beyond. When he passed away, the funeral was attended by hundreds of people whose lives he had touched, many of whom had only learned his name from watching The Tonight Show that Tuesday night. Jimmy Fallon still keeps a photo from that evening on his desk. It shows Robert in his gray cardigan, tears in his eyes, finally free from the secret that had defined half his life. The episode won Emmy Awards and Peabody recognition, but more importantly, it reminded millions of viewers that generosity doesn't require recognition, that heroism often looks like ordinary people doing extraordinary things in quiet ways, and that sometimes the most powerful moments in television happen when someone decides to tell the truth about what it means to live for others. On the anniversary of that broadcast, Jimmy always ends his monologue the same way. "Be kind to each other. You never know who might be your anonymous angel." Because that Tuesday night in Studio 6B, America learned that sometimes the most incredible secrets are the ones people keep not to protect themselves, but to protect the purity of their generosity. And sometimes it takes a dying man's courage to remind a whole country what anonymous love really looks like. The weeks following the broadcast brought changes that rippled far beyond what anyone could have anticipated. Robert's story had struck something deep in the American consciousness, tapping into a collective longing for authentic goodness in a world that often felt manufactured and cynical. Within 48 hours of the episode airing, Chen's Hardware had received over $200,000 in donations. The money came from everywhere: elementary school classes that had collected their lunch money, corporate executives who sent anonymous checks, retired teachers living on fixed incomes who mailed $5 bills with handwritten notes. But it wasn't just money. Robert received thousands of letters, emails, and packages. A quilting circle in Montana sent a handmade blanket. A chef in New Orleans shipped frozen meals with heating instructions. A group of mechanics in Detroit offered free car repairs for any families Robert was helping. The hardware store became a distribution center for kindness. Robert was overwhelmed. He'd spent 15 years giving in secret, comfortable in the shadows of his generosity. Suddenly, he was the center of a movement he'd never intended to start. The attention was both humbling and terrifying. "I don't know how to be famous for being kind," he told Jimmy during a follow-up phone call. "I just wanted to help people." "You don't have to be famous," Jimmy replied. "You just have to keep being you." The medical response was equally extraordinary. Memorial Sloan Kettering contacted Robert within days, offering comprehensive treatment at no cost. But they weren't alone. Cancer centers across the country reached out, wanting to contribute to his care. A pharmaceutical company quietly arranged for all his medications to be covered. Robert, who had spent his life savings helping others, suddenly found himself surrounded by medical support he could never have afforded. His first appointment at Sloan Kettering was unlike anything he'd experienced in his previous cancer battle. Dr. Sarah Martinez, the oncologist assigned to his case, had watched the Tonight Show episode with her teenage daughter. "Mr. Chen," she said during their initial consultation, "I want you to know that treating you isn't just medicine for me. It's an honor. You've shown my daughter what it means to live for others. The least I can do is help you keep living." The treatment plan was aggressive but hopeful. Robert's cancer had progressed, but it wasn't as advanced as his doctors in Queens had initially feared. The combination of cutting-edge treatments and Robert's surprisingly strong constitution gave everyone reason for cautious optimism. Meanwhile, the impact on Chan's hardware was transformative. What had been a struggling small business became a community hub. Volunteers arrived daily, offering to help with everything from inventory to customer service. A local contractor donated materials for a complete store renovation. An interior designer worked pro bono to create a more efficient layout. Most significantly, the store became a model for community-supported businesses. Customers didn't just shop there, they brought their neighbors. They organized fundraising events. They created a formal volunteer program that helped elderly customers with home repairs and maintenance. Mrs. Angela Rodriguez, a regular customer whose roof Robert had helped repair 3 years earlier, became the unofficial coordinator of these efforts. "He helped us when we had nowhere to turn," she told a local news reporter. "Now it's our turn to help him and everyone else who needs it." The transformation wasn't just logistical, it was spiritual. The store had always been a place where Robert quietly assessed customers' needs and found ways to help. Now it became a place where the entire community participated in that mission. Customers started a pay-it-forward program, leaving money for other customers' purchases. People donated tools and supplies for community projects. Robert found himself managing not just a hardware store, but an informal social services center. Families struggling with home repairs didn't just get free materials, they got teams of volunteers to help with the work. Elderly customers didn't just buy supplies, they got rides to the store and assistance carrying packages to their cars. The change in Robert himself was equally profound. For 15 years, he had lived with the constant tension of maintaining his secret. Every act of generosity had been carefully orchestrated to hide his involvement. Every thank you he received felt both meaningful and dishonest, since people were thanking him for passing along someone else's kindness. Now, for the first time since his initial cancer diagnosis, Robert could be openly generous. He could hand someone money for heating bills without pretending it came from a mysterious donor. He could organize help for struggling families without elaborate explanations about anonymous benefactors. "It's like I can finally breathe," he told Jimmy during one of their regular check-ins. "I didn't realize how exhausting it was to hide kindness." The psychological relief was measurable. Robert's medical team noted improvements not just in his response to treatment, but in his overall mental health. The stress of maintaining his secret had been taking a larger toll than anyone had realized. 6 months after the Tonight Show appearance, Robert's cancer had stabilized. His doctors were cautiously optimistic about his prognosis. More importantly, he was thriving in ways that had nothing to do with medicine. The Chin Foundation, established with donations from viewers, had grown beyond anyone's expectations. What started as a way to help Queens families had become a national model for community-based philanthropy. The foundation didn't just give money. It connected people, organized volunteer efforts, and created sustainable support systems. Robert hired Maria Santos, a recent social work graduate, to help manage the foundation's operations. Maria had grown up in the neighborhood and remembered getting help from Chin's Hardware when her family's furnace broke during a particularly harsh winter. She'd been 12 years old and hadn't understood where the money for repairs had come from. Finding out it was Mr. Chen all along felt like discovering that heroes were real, she said. Now I get to help him help other people. It's the best job in the world. The foundation's approach was revolutionary in its simplicity. Instead of complex application processes and bureaucratic oversight, they relied on community knowledge and trust. Neighbors nominated families who needed help. Local volunteers assessed needs and coordinated responses. Money flowed quickly to where it was needed most. Robert hired Maria Santos, a recent social work graduate, to help manage the foundation's operations. Maria had grown up in the neighborhood and remembered getting help from Chan's Hardware when her family's furnace broke during a harsh winter. She'd been 12 years old and hadn't understood where the money for repairs had come from. Finding out it was Mr. Chan all along felt like discovering that heroes were real, she said. Now I get